4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Project Egg Show. Today, we have the honor of speaking with Josh Zloof. Founded on the idea of making 1 billion people happy, Josh, the co-founder and CEO of Sudden Coffee, has served over 100,000 cups of his premier instant coffee that he delivers right to your door. With over 3.3 million raised from investors like Combinator and CRV, Sudden has been featured in Food and Wine, the New York Times, and GQ. Now, Josh has also done some other amazing things and has a ton of impressive accolades that I could not possibly cover in this very brief introduction. So I'll stop talking so that you can meet the wonderful, the amazing Josh. How you doing today?
Hey, good. Thanks for that intro.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for carving out the time to be here for the show today. I'm excited. I know everybody else is excited. Hopefully you're excited. Let's do this.
Definitely.
What is your story?
What is my story? So I was, should I start from the very beginning? I had 2 parents.
Absolutely.
So I grew up in the Bay Area. I was actually born in New York, but grew up kind of around the startup tech scene, stuff like that. My dad actually was in computer science, and I kind of just grew up around that environment. I went to school and I got really into this idea of how do you make restaurants more efficient? And it almost became this like obsession. Like I went to McDonald's, there's a really long line, and I wanted to figure out how you could rearrange the store to make it more and more efficient. So I ended up going into consulting after school because I wanted to figure out, how to get paid to do that. And so I worked at a company called McKinsey and went to factories and call centers and just did that over and over again. And then the Bay Area was calling me back, and I wanted to figure out how to merge that with technology. Like, what could you do to make a restaurant more efficient with an iPad app? And I joined Groupon at the time. Groupon was taking off and making all these apps for restaurants. And so that was really my first experience working in the food industry in some form. And I realized that, food is actually not about being efficient. It's about making people feel good. It's about connecting with people. And that was, for me, this really big turning point. And then everything after that was about, how do you make people feel good with food and drink? And so quit my job, spent a year and a half kind of in the desert, trying out different ideas, not literally the desert, but the startup desert. And eventually started working on Sudden Coffee. And that was almost 4 years ago.
When you're talking about that pivotal change, when you went from thinking it was about efficiency to it was more about connecting and giving them the good feeling and the experience, that's a pretty monumental shift in thinking.
Yeah.
What was the catalyst for that change?
Yeah. So I would say there were 2 phases, 2 stages for me. The first was, I was going to a bunch of restaurants when I was working at Groupon, places, Michelin star places. So Alinea, Aviary, these are like the top restaurants in the country. And I met with one of the managers there, and he said, we're looking for features for our app. Like, how do we automate stuff? And he's like, I like to, when I'm in a restaurant, when I'm managing the restaurant, I look at a customer and I ask myself, what are they going to ask for before they ask for it? And how can I get ahead of predicting what they want? If I see someone reaching for a coat, I'm going to call them an Uber. If I see them, standing up, I'm going to, put their napkin down or something like that. And all of a sudden I realized, hey, it's not about removing the person out of the process. It's about giving the human tools to deliver that better process. These guys would have literally a book, a binder on every customer. If you book a reservation at one of these restaurants, they'll go and stalk you on LinkedIn, Facebook, find out if it's your anniversary without you having to say anything. They figure this stuff out. And so I got into that. I read this book by this guy, Danny Meyer. He's one of the top restaurateurs. And that sort of like developed my thinking around it. The second phase, though, was I was sort of into this, but I didn't believe for myself whether I could jump in and do that. You know, like getting into food and telling your family and your friends that, hey, I'm like leaving tech and I'm going to do this coffee thing or this food thing. I needed to really believe in it, believe that that was what I was meant to do, or believe that I was excited about that. And that was there's a lot there that led to that.
So let's explore that, because that seems like it's a hugely impactful point. Like, let's explore that.
Yeah. So this all sort of took place after I left Groupon. I just started trying out different startup ideas. And the first idea I tried was a personal shopping service. I would send someone to your house, look at your closet, come back and bring clothes for you. And everything was sort of what, you know, I was looking at my skill set and tech, and, you know, I was just trying out idea after idea. And they all kind of, you know, it was more just based off the math around like, what's a good business model? What's my skill set? You know, how do I combine those things? Like this very analytical approach. And I spent a year just trying stuff out and not really feeling a hook. The thing that was interesting was like, you work on these ideas that actually could probably be a good idea, but I couldn't make it happen. Like I would wake up and not want to do it. And eventually I through a friend of a friend, hired a management coach for myself, or a goals coach. Because one of the ideas I was working on was around coaching. And so I got intro to this person, Michelle, who was great. And she took me through this exercise around finding my 5 values. Like, what are your core values? And that was, I would say, one of the most pivotal exercises in my life. And so I realized that, you know, my values are purpose, excitement, community, relaxation. And so all of these ideas I had been working on, you know, I was working on an ad tech idea at some point, and there was no community aspect. There was nothing that had to do with people. And meanwhile, in the background, I was actually working on a Burning Man camp. And I spent like all my time on this Burning Man camp and nothing on this ad tech idea. And she called out like, hey, you know, Burning Man is community. Like there's community, there's excitement, there's this relaxation when you get to do it. And so if you can just find startup ideas that have those 5 values, then you're good. And once I owned up to that, then I said, okay, well, you know, all of these, I've been working on other food ideas in the background also, and they all had that theme. And that allowed me to really just own up to that and just say, cool, like this aligns to all my values. They're different than other people's values. That's why I like them and other people might not. And that's okay. And just roll with it.
Why were those 5 values yours? Like, why?
I don't like, so I don't know why those ones specifically are me. I can tell you the way that we sort of got to them, and also kind of how they're different than other people's, if that makes sense. So the basis of the exercise was, there was like a really long survey, but there were 3 questions that I remember filling out. One was, name 3 moments that you felt the most excited or the most alive. Name 3 moments. I think alive was actually the specific word. Name 3 moments when you felt the most accomplished, or like you'd done something. And name 3 moments when you felt the most, I think it was fulfilled. And they all kind of sound similar, but they're actually a little bit different. And so I would have these, you know, example is a moment of feeling accomplished was working really hard at something. And like, I really liked the idea of spending 2 months being really focused and actually seeing the progress and seeing day by day progress. And so that for me was an example of growth. Like, I need to be working on something where you're getting better and better every day. contrast that with, I got a lot of friends who are in science. And when you're in science, you might be working on something for like a year, and you can't, like, the experiments aren't going anywhere. And suddenly you have a breakthrough. And that breakthrough is like, you go from here to here. And you're so interested by the intellectual rigor of that, like, process, that you're like, cool, I don't need to have daily progress. I just need to be doing something using my brain. And for me, like, I grew up in, like a mathy household. And so I was always like, oh, I really need to be doing something that is really intellectually stimulating. Like, I need to be doing something that's really smart. But that wasn't a value for me, it turns out. So I've been working on all these ideas where I'm like, oh, what's the crazy algorithm, or what's the math, like, which I can do or I like doing, but it was very different than, with coffee or with food. Like, I could get better at it every day. We could make it cheaper every day. We could sell more every day. So I'm like seeing this like constant progress. And so that was an example of, like, before I had been trying to do things that might have been intellectually hard or, mathematically hard, but not community driven. And so seeing that, oh, if I do something that's community driven, that I can tell people about, share with people, give you a coffee, that for me is really important. And that was kind of like a big realization for me.
You used the word belief when you were saying that you were trying all those ideas in that year, and they may work for somebody else, but they weren't the right things for you.
Yep.
And you said that was tied to your belief, maybe in yourself, or maybe in the idea. When you got clarity on your core values, how did that then change your belief? What was the relationship between those two?
Yeah. I think the two big things were, the first one was no longer putting stock in other people's values, which I think is a thing that we tend to do. So, like, when you're doing something that's aligned with your values, it feels ridiculously easy. Like, it feels like you have a cheat code on the world. And so you don't think it's hard. So you're just like, why should I be doing this thing? Like, so for me, building the Burning Man camp was really easy. Like, as 100-person camp, there was like logistics, and it was like a $30K budget, and it was easy for me. And I have a friend who's like a top engineer, one of the best programmers I know, and he's like, oh my God, I could never do this. And I'm like, dude, I could never code. But this is easy for me. And he was like, well, coding's easy for me. And so you end up, like, when you're with your friends, you're asking for advice. If you have a friend who really values family, you'll say, oh, maybe I should value family. If you have a friend who really values financial security or like making money, you'll say, maybe I should value that. Like, maybe I should do that thing. And so once I had a true north where I could say, oh, my best friend, Sean, he really values financial stability, and I don't value that. And so that doesn't mean that either of us is right or wrong. It just means that we have different values. That was like the first thing where I could then believe in what I was saying versus believing in other people's stuff. And then I think once you, the flip side of that, and it's like the related point, is just realizing that, oh, like, my values or the things that I do that are in alignment with that are my superpower. And I have those things and other people don't. And if I start to dial into that, then all these crazy things happen. Like, it just becomes, all these like seemingly magical things happen. And so that was the other part. Then I started trusting in mine specifically and seeing that return. And then I was like, wow, this is working. I just need to do more of that. And that kind of gave me the confidence in it.
So it's almost like a very positive cycle of, you get an alignment, you understand that true north, where you want to go. You then have belief in that, and then you can take action, and then you can start seeing things working, and then you start to have more belief in yourself, and then you just keep going up and up and up. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Totally. Yeah. And I think oftentimes the thing that happens is like you do the thing you're really good at and you're like, oh, this is too easy. I'm not challenging myself. So let me do the thing that I'm not good at. Instead of saying, how do I take the thing that I'm good at? And let's say I'm at level 3. And how do I take that to like level 40? Like, how do I keep like, for me, community? How do I keep building community until it gets hard? And then I'm going to be like way, way higher on that ladder for that value than the other way around.
That is interesting. So instead of saying, okay, I'm good at this thing, now let me move on to the next thing that I'm not as good at, or shift my focus away from this, take this to such a high level that it then becomes hard again because you've achieved such a high level in it that it's once again challenging.
Exactly. And you might have to think creatively about how to do that for yourself, and that's the harder part in that cycle, I guess.
Okay, so you're getting all these things in line. It seems like this is a lot of introspection and working with your coach and asking yourself some really hard questions and really taking a stand and getting your mind right. And then you're like, okay, now I know what I need to be doing. At what point in this process did you actually start your business?
Yeah. So the play-by-play is, so I do this values exercise. I'm working on 3 different startup ideas simultaneously and this Burning Man camp. And with the coach over the course of 2 months, I like stopped working on 2 of the ideas. I broke ties with the team working on the ad tech idea. I devote 2 weeks to fully focus on the Burning Man thing. And in the background, I had been working on this. It was a burrito bowl delivery idea. Me and my friends went to Chipotle. We got 100 burrito bowls and we made a website to order these burrito bowls. And I would get really excited to work on that. So I come back from Burning Man and I just start, and my coach is like, why don't you try working on that for like a month, 2 months? Start working on that. And all of a sudden, I'm actually excited to work on this thing. I end up hiring a Michelin star chef to make burrito bowls. I do tastings. It's like all out of my kitchen. And I'm like, okay, cool. We're launching this thing. This is going to be great. And then a week before, or 2 days before, my chef quits. He's like, hey, I'm like not really into it.
No.
I had emailed a whole bunch of friends, not like I didn't do anything crazy, but emailed at least like 150 people that was like, here's the menu that we're going to launch in a week and it's going to be awesome. And then this guy quits and I'm like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing, so horrible. Like, what am I going to do? I got nothing. And I just go into this depression slump. And I end up meeting up with my former boss, one of the guys I used to work for at Groupon. And I tell him about this whole story. This is like 3 years later. And he's like, hey, so I didn't know you were working on food now. I know this guy. We just helped him do a seed investment. And he pulls out a test tube of coffee. And he's like, try this instant coffee. And I was like, wow, this is pretty good. And he was like, cool. Do you have time now? And I was like, yeah, I'm not working on this other thing. Like, that's over. And so I walk over, it's like 2 blocks away, and I meet my co-founder. He opens the door, and it's a garage in San Francisco. He's wearing an apron, and it was like, I'm working on this instant coffee. And so he'd made a prototype, was trying to figure out how to sell it, could only make, I think it was like 10 cups at a time or a month or something like that. And we hadn't sold any tubes yet. And this was right before Christmas. And so we just started talking, and I said, why are you doing this? He was the 9th best barista in the world that year. He won this championship. He was like classic. His name's Kale. I was with him the other day. He's like a hipster barista type at the time. And it's like, why are you making this instant coffee? And he was like, well, I realized that I used to really care about the scientifically perfect cup of coffee, but really I realized that coffee is about making people feel good and building community. And I was like, dude, this is exactly like, I literally wrote that on a note card about my burrito bowl idea 2 weeks ago. Like, we gotta like talk about this. And we started vibing, and it was right before Christmas. And in that meeting, I was like, okay, so you haven't sold any yet, right? And he was like, no. And I was like, all right, let's figure out how to sell this in a week. How many can we make? And then we just like, did the operations plan. I went and like made the website. He brewed the coffee, and we launched it, and we sold out in 30 seconds. So we were like, wow, cool. There's a thing here.
Wait a second. Okay. There are so many doors here that I want to open. But let's rewind for a second, okay? Because I think there's a really important thing that I want to drill down into. When you were doing the burrito bowls,
yep,
and you had hyped it up to 150 people, or maybe sent emails, and then there's more hype on top of that, and everything was set to go, and the dude quit on you at the very last second.
Yeah,
that's like the worst possible scenario, right? Like you made these promises, and then outside of your control, this person just totally just destroyed everything, and then you could not deliver on the things that you said. Like, that to me seems like the ultimate fear of entrepreneurs, of like, I make all these promises, I make this big thing, and then I do not deliver on it. Like, and I'm not trying to I'm saying this because I think there's a huge lesson here. And like, you went through that, like you went through worst case scenario, and you survived, and then you thrived. Can you talk a little bit about like how did you feel during that point, and how did you then get back up and keep going?
Yeah, so I love that you asked that, because that happened. So in this year and a half that I was trying ideas, I tried probably, I don't know, 10 to 15 different things. And every idea had that point for one reason or another. I tried doing the shopping thing first and took it to a certain point, and then I kind of burnt out. And then I had people who said, oh, like, I want to use that. And I was like, oh, I'm not doing it anymore. Tried doing another thing where I was a peer mentoring group, where you imagine like bringing 10 people together for to mentor each other, and you make it like this paid coaching service. And did the first couple, and at the end of every one, I was like, we're gonna do another one in 2 weeks. But then the economics on the idea didn't work, so I didn't do another one in 2 weeks. But I had to tell everyone that we were doing one in 2 weeks. And so you get these emails, where is it happening? Is it happening? You're like, no, it's not happening. And so much of trying out these ideas is you have to put up this landing page or verbally make these promises, because you're trying to make it real enough to get people to tell you that they want to buy. But for various reasons, either the team or the economics, or not enough people tell you they want to buy, you dump the idea. And especially for me at that time, I had 10 friends who got married that year, from close friends from high school. And I'd go to all of these weddings with their parents. And every wedding, they'd be like, oh, how's your shopping business going? And I was like, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm doing coaching, like next wedding. How's the coaching business going? Oh, I'm not doing that anymore. Doing burrito bowls. How's burrito bowls going? Oh, I'm not doing that anymore. And so you end up, I think that was the psychological training of being an entrepreneur that year gave me, which is getting used to trying something, putting it out to the community, telling the world. And that's the thing you're scared to do, because you don't want to go through that. Then having it fail, and then meeting those same people and walking with your tail between your legs and saying like, yeah, I'm not doing that one anymore. And just getting used to that. But I think like, working with, it does suck. It sucks every time. It doesn't get easier. It gets a little bit easier. Like, you recover in a few days instead of a few weeks. But it's still hard. but I'm working with Michelle, my coach at the time. So we would divide this up into sprints. Like she'd say, like, okay, cool, you're going to do this for a month or 2 months, and don't get too attached to the idea. You're just you're learning about yourself as much as you're learning about the idea, as much as you're learning about the team. And so that when that happened, I remember calling her and just saying, like, should I keep trying to do the burrito bowl thing? Should I try to do this? And we went back almost to square one and said, like, why don't you just take 2 weeks, do something fun, like learn, like I wanted to code. I wanted to just like take an online coding course. She was like, just do that. Don't worry about it and see if something else bubbles up. And then lo and behold, it did. And so, yeah, but I won't lie, like that sucked. Like that was like, I was meeting with my former boss from Groupon, and I was like almost going to cancel the meeting because I was, about to just tell a horribly embarrassing story. And yeah, that's just sort of like this, it sucks every time.
Well, I think you're right that it does not get like it sucks every single time. And dude, I've had so many failures in my life. Like if there was a Guinness Book of World Records for like number of times that you have failed at things, like I would definitely be up there in the in the ranks. But I totally agree that you do get to like bounce back faster, right? And you get to keep coming back and keep coming back, and you learn from every single one. And I think it is such an inspiring story to hear you talk about that, because very few people are actually willing to admit that and to be like, yeah, I tried this and I failed, and I tried that and then I failed there. And then, I think the takeaway there is that you survived, you made it, and like now you're working on this amazing, amazing thing, which I definitely want to get more into. But that is such an that's so inspirational. And that, for those who are listening, they're like, oh man, I'm on my fourth or fifth thing and I just keep failing. Like, yeah, it's going to happen, but you got this. You just got to keep going and keep working at it, keep trying those new things. So I'm very glad and very glad that you were willing to share that. So thank you.
Totally. The scary thing is that it's still like that, except now you take bigger, like you just have to keep taking these bigger and bigger bets. Like we are going to try a new technology and we're going to just buy this thing for like 300K, and it might totally not work. And you're just like, yep, we're going to just have to try it. Like you can't know. And that, it's important to build that. And that it's cliche. Everyone says like fail fast, get used to failing, but to weather the emotional aspect of it. And I can't say I'm an expert, and I also recommend like having a therapist for these things, like all that stuff. But you need to build that emotional core to deal with it, because it's hard.
I agree. I 100% agree. So let's keep going through the narrative. I'm really interested in learning about the 30-second sellout. So let's drill down into that. How did you actually make that happen? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, that one was actually, so we only had, 200 servings at the time. And so we were selling it right before Christmas. We made it a holiday stocking stuffer. And my co-founder has a really, really strong network and reputation in coffee. And then I grew up in the Bay Area, so we were in San Francisco. So I have a lot of friends in San Francisco. So we made this really awesome stocking stuffer gift. We had 2 tubes of coffee. We used these glass tubes, which in retrospect wasn't very smart, but we got them off Amazon. And we were selling it for $2.50 a serving. So you get 2 for $5, and it was instant coffee. We actually sell it more than that now, but at the time we were like, no one's going to buy instant coffee for like $3 a serving. Like that's crazy. But we made a Shopify website, We actually got studio equipment on Amazon, so you can like take photos. We were in this garage. We set up a table. We took like really cool shots of the powder, and we did all of this in like 4 days, 5 days. Like just moved really, really fast, and then we just posted it on Facebook and Instagram, and we said, hey, we're launching this holiday stocking stuffer. Made coffee made by the 9th best barista in the world, roasted by, I think it was Ritual Coffee was our first one. So it was really, really high quality coffee. And you can get it in time for Christmas. And I think we said we would handle it. So we actually biked to everyone and delivered the coffee. And I think it was just it was something no one had seen before. And when you're working on these startup ideas, everything that you try out, no matter what, you'll have 10 friends who are like, yeah, like I would try that once, or I think I would like, or I have a friend who might be into that. So it's really hard to know if someone actually wants the thing. Like it's really hard to know. So when I was doing this shopping idea, I'd get people who would, tell me they'd be interested, and they said I would pay for it until I asked them to pay, then they didn't pay. So it's really significant when you're trying to figure out what to work on to see that spike, even if it's like a small spike, even if it's like 100, to just see that it disappears like that is the signal that you need to decide if you should work on something. So you want to get to that point as fast as possible. Like instead of having that take 3 months to get to the point where you can try selling it yesterday. Try selling it as fast as you can so you can see if it has that spike with people.
So when you're going out and trying to sell it, how do you get the eyeballs on it? I mean, do you invest in the ads? Do you just call everybody that you know? Do you how do you actually get the traffic on it? And if you're trying to sell it yesterday, do you ever pre-sell it? Like where does that fit into the equation?
Yeah. So first off, I would say that it's very different when you're like trying to sell it to, turn it into a business versus if you're trying to sell it to see if there's like a spike, if there's like people who are interested in buying it, right? So when I'm trying to get eyeballs on it for like to scale it, which was a different phase, then it was like we tried everything: ads, PR, podcasts, retail, brand marketing, like all that stuff. Before that, though, like in that first week, right, we just posted it to our social network, like to our Facebook page, to our friends. I know like a lot of folks are introverted, but I would guess that most people could come up with a list, whether it's on email, Facebook, or whatever, of at least 200 to 300 people where they could get eyeballs on something to get a signal of whether people would want to do something or not. And that's like the main thing. That's enough. And these things are binary. Like I think a lot of folks get caught up on like, is 200 statistically significant? It's like either going to really work and you'll know because everyone wants to buy it, or it's not going to work. There's another question around like, is it the right market? Like what if I'm in San Francisco and I'm making a product for people in, 1800 style cowboys. I don't know, I'm making something up. How do I get at those people? I still believe that even in your group of 200 people, you'll have some people who get like really, really into it, even if it's like some kind of weird niche product. So that's like how I would address that. And pre-orders, yeah, so absolutely pre-orders work. I think the important thing is that you are taking a credit card and charging people in that moment. In other words, like if you said, hey, sign up for my wait list and you get to pay me in 3 months, that wouldn't be as significant. If you're like, sign up for a pre-order, pay me now, and then I'm going to give it to you later, that counts to me. And I've noticed this because I had a lot of ideas where I would say like, would you pay for it? Sign up for the wait list. And they'd say, yeah. And then I would say, cool, pay me. And people would say, no, like I talked about it with my girlfriend. I'm not really into this, or like whatever, et cetera. So having that making someone make a decision to give you a credit card is a buying decision, and that's what you need to get to.
So y'all sold out in 30 seconds, which is amazing. What happened after that?
So so we sold out in 30 seconds. This period for us was more also about testing out working together. And I think that's really important. We decided before we had that first conversation, and I said, Kale, like, let's try working together for like a few weeks. At the end of the few weeks, let's revisit and see if we still like working together. And if not, then, no problem, no harm, no foul. And if yes, then let's figure it out. So after that, we were like, cool, we sold out. More importantly, we liked working together. It was fun, and we got a lot of shit done. Excuse my French. And so we were like, cool.
French welcome. French very welcome.
I don't know the rules with live streaming, but so at that point, it was Christmas. So we took Christmas off and came back, and we said, okay, cool, let's figure out how to scale this. And so our problem at the time was, since then, like for the first 6 months of the business, was capacity. We were only, the way that we figured out how to make coffee optimally. So we take coffee, we fully brew it, and then we freeze dry it. And that's how all instant coffee is made, or all instant coffee is brewed coffee that's dehydrated. And the way you dehydrate it, and also the coffee and how you brew it, that's what makes it good or bad at instant coffee. So we wanted to figure out a way to make coffee that was as concentrated as possible before we freeze dried it, because freeze drying is really energy intensive. So if you can remove a lot of the water before, AKA you have really concentrated coffee, you can get more out of the freeze dryer. So in that first time we met, Kale had been using pour over coffee. And then we brainstormed and said, hey, like, let's use espresso because it's more concentrated. It's 10 times more concentrated. But you can't make espresso at scale. Like, it's impossible. So he would be pulling espresso shots all day, and I would be packaging it. And that's like what we'd be doing. And so we could only make, as many coffees as espresso shots. So everything around then was, okay, well, can we make 100 this week, 200 the next week, 400 the next week? What do we need to do that? And then we would have these flash sales where every Monday we would sell whatever we made the week before. And this was like really interesting. I think a lot of people who are into growth are like, well, how did you keep getting more people? Like, where did the eyeballs come from? And basically because this product had never existed before, and there was excitement, and more people would come every Monday to place an order. And we're not talking about like tens of thousands of people, right? It's like a few hundred people. So one person who's a barista at a top cafe gets it, they post it, all of their friends want to try it, they try it, and so it kind of spread through this word of mouth in a way that was very, like, you can really see how it was spreading out. And then I think we made a mistake in February where, and I look back and always question this decision. One of our investors said, what if you just started taking subscriptions now? And we said, well, we don't have enough capacity. He said, well, what do you need for capacity? And we said, well, we need to hire full-time baristas. We need to hire someone to pull espresso shots, and that would be really expensive. And he was like, how expensive? And I ran the numbers, and I was like, $6 per cup to make it. And he said, well, why don't you try charging $6 and make a subscription? And so we did. And so you could buy 5 for $30 as a subscription, and we just put it out there, and we got, 300 subscribers right away. So we're like, oh, cool, this is awesome. But we lost all of the scarcity. And so within, 2 months, a lot of those people were no longer subscribers, because a lot of them were people in coffee who have access to tons of coffee, and they didn't need a subscription for instant coffee. They just wanted to try it. And we had no reason for like people to keep coming back. And that's like a whole other story, how we like dealt with that. But that was sort of like, I would say, the second phase of the business where things all of a sudden got really hard around doing that.
Wait a second. There's so much here, and we have to drill down into it. So you have this thing where every Monday you have a flash sale and you're selling what you made the week before. Okay. That's brilliant. That is so brilliant. That is like built-in urgency and scarcity. Like, that's amazing. But it was legitimate. Like, you could only make so much coffee. You mentioned how your investor told you to start taking subscriptions. So how did the investor get into the picture? What was the relationship there? And yeah, so let's start there, and then let's talk about the subscription a little bit.
Yeah. So at the time we basically had a bunch of seed investors or angel investors. So these are mostly folks who who've done startups on their own. And, they put in, anywhere from, I think, as low as like $10,000 all the way up to like 50 or 100,000 for some folks, so like this is before Y Combinator. This is before CRV, or where we were raising larger rounds. So, like every couple weeks, and it's equivalent to like an advisor, or like a former boss or something like that. So, we would go meet with these different folks. Someone was a marketing expert, someone was, a product expert or whatever, and just say like, hey, here's what we're up to, et cetera. And so one of the guys we talked to had sold a couple startups, and he wasn't like a major investor, but he was just giving us advice. And I don't think he necessarily, like, I think we took the advice a little too seriously, but he said, he was just helping us. He was pushing us to break through constraints. So we had said, eventually we want to make a subscription. And so he said, well, why can't you make a subscription today? And we said, well, we don't have capacity. And he said, well, what would you do? And it's sort of this like chain of whys, right? Leading to, well, why don't you try just doing a subscription tomorrow? And I think at the time, like neither myself nor Kale, neither of us were like truly good at online marketing. So what we were missing is that, hey, screw the sales. This flash sale thing is a great email list builder, and it's getting engagement, and it's a thing in itself, and it doesn't need to connect to the actual sales, and keep that alive as much as possible, right? Like, don't hurt that. And so we were focused on like, how do we make the subscription work? That's the long-term bet. We knew we wanted to eventually have a subscription, right? So, and so, I think we kind of listened to that advice a little too much, and we kind of lost sight of like the thing that was, we ripped the Band-Aid off too soon. It was kind of what happened. And so it wasn't, I know when I say it's an investor, it sounds like, oh my God, this, big, scary, shadowy figure made us do this thing. That wasn't how it happened. We were literally having barbecue at a restaurant with this guy who was brainstorming ideas with us, and, pushed on a bunch of our assumptions. And then we were like, okay, well, let's try this out. I still don't know, we don't know whether that was if we hadn't done that, what would have happened? Like, the flash sales could have easily eventually stopped working too, but you never know.
So with all these angel investors, advisors, people who would put in some money, how did you deal with with compensating them? Like, what was their incentive? Why would they invest money in you? And how did you manage that relationship?
So all these folks are, investors in the same way that a VC firm would be an investor. So they own they own shares in the company. And so, they want us to, presumably do really well and either get bought eventually or go public or, have some form of an exit. And, I think like our market, what's really interesting about the market we're in is, instant coffee. It's something like a $50 billion industry worldwide. It's had no innovation. And specialty coffee, which is sort of the movement to treat coffee like wine, where you're getting like single origin coffees, et cetera, makes up over 50% of US coffee consumption now, retail coffee consumption. In other words, the hipster cafe is the main way people are drinking coffee today in the US, only over the last couple of years. In other words, it's growing really fast. And so we combine the two. That's like what our idea is about. Like we want to make hipster coffee more accessible to people in the US or in the world. So I think that to me, like that's why, we were able to raise money, because I think it's a really, like, it makes sense. And I still think it makes sense, 4 years later. But, I think when you raise money from angel investors, I think we probably have a list now of 20 or 30 people. Some have put in a couple $1 million and some have put in a couple $1,000. And so, yeah, you have to send out, I'm actually not great at this, but you should be sending out a monthly update, or at least a quarterly update. And then, you treat them also as your list of mentors or advisors. So if you need help with someone, you reach out. If you need help with something, you reach out. I think what's interesting though is, you have to find folks who understand startup investing and get that no matter how good the business, 99 or 90, but I think it's 99% of startups fail. And the CEO doesn't have time to send you detailed financials because it's just the CEO and 3 people or 4 people, and be ready for that. And that it's kind of like throwing your money into a black box to work on this exciting idea that might go nowhere. But as an investor, like, you have a belief that this should exist and someone should try it. And that's kind of, I always recommend the mindset for someone getting into angel investing. Like you want to just see if this idea has legs. And so, I do caution folks, like I've talked to other entrepreneurs about, like if you're taking money from someone who's used to hedge fund investing with detailed financials and like all this stuff, like
different ball game.
Huh?
Different ball game.
Yeah. And so you'll have folks who like, they put in $2,000 and they're asking you for like lots of details. And you're like, hey, like this is still taking me a couple of hours that I need to be spending with the team. And I can't, like, I'm sorry, but like, I got to give you the rough answer here. And I think that's just an interesting learning on the investor side.
So I want to just touch on this just a little bit more, and then I want to keep hearing about the story because this is fascinating, and I don't want to get off track. But when you're finding these advisors and you're giving them shares of your company, like that is a huge gift that you are giving away. That's a piece of you that you are literally saying, here you go, I'm trusting you with this. How did you vet them? How did you make sure that they were the right people to essentially marry in a business way?
So I think when it's someone who's writing a large check, like if it's over a couple $100,000 or over, and as you grow as a company, that what you consider large increase, it changes. You vet someone in the same way that you gather references for hiring someone. In other words, you ask for other companies that they've invested in, you talk to a few of those references, and you get more info. But I think the other thing is that you also have to, I think a lot of entrepreneurs worry a little bit too much about giving up control. Like you kind of have to take, I've been getting to Buddhism a lot more lately. I have a friend who's really into it. You have to take a frame of, it's like not being so attached to this company that like it, Sudden Coffee, like I have put my heart and soul into this company, but it does not define me. It's something I do. And it's something that I'm doing now at this point in my life. And I will probably work on other companies. I might go work for someone else. I might found another company. And this is the, hopefully one of many. And so you're trying to find people who get the idea quickly, like they're just excited about it. They get you like working with them. Those are sort of like emotional feelings. And then you got to move forward. Like you can't spend too much time getting worried about it. An investor who's putting in $5,000 has they have no control of the company. The voting rights don't carry enough weight. And you can choose to ignore them via email. They can give you a bad reference. They can tell other people not to invest. That's a possibility. But you kind of just got to trust it and say, hey, like, it's more important for me to figure out how to make more cups of coffee than worry about vetting this investor. We're all here to make this work as fast as possible. Incentives are aligned. In my mind, incentives are aligned. Like all of us want this to be successful. We might have different versions of what that means, but we still want to make it successful. Cool. Like that's it. Let's do it. And if it turns out that's just another risk you take, like in the same way that my chef quit and I was trusting my chef. If you have a investor who hurts you or the company or whatever, and the company fails because of that, first off, I think that's pretty rare. I think it's very rare that you have an investor who directly leads to the failing of the company. But if that does happen, then okay, like move on to the next one, and you learned. And I think that's all you can do.
That's very wise, my friend. I feel like it's interesting to see somebody like yourself who you're in the trenches and you're going through this stuff, and to really like get the inside peek into how you think about this. I think that is incredibly valuable, and I'm very grateful that you would share that. Okay, so let's get back onto the story, because I think this is such a great story. So you try the subscription, you got the 300. Some people are falling off the flash sale. That now isn't the model. What do you do from that point?
Yeah. So at the time, we're working on two really big problems. The primary is, how do we make more of this stuff? Like we can't be making 1,000. We got to be making 10,000, 100,000, 1 million. Is there a giant espresso machine? Like, does that exist? Right? Like, that's literally what we're, like, is there a giant freeze dryer? How do we get more freeze dryers? Right. So there's like a lot of energy going into that problem. And, we thought when we started Sudden Coffee, we were like, great, we're going to take really high quality beans. We're going to send it to like a magical instant coffee co-packer. They're going to send us back coffee in the way we want it. It's going to taste great. And we'll just be a marketing company. I mean, it wasn't that clear, but that's kind of like, I don't think I could have said it to you like that before, but that's kind of what we were doing, actions we were taking. Well, it turns out that was impossible. And there's like a whole bunch of reasons. Like the last 3 years of the company have been mostly focused on us designing, really industrial engineering ways to make this at scale at a cheap enough price. So like it literally would cost us $6 for one serving. And it looks like this, by the way. This is a tube of Sudden. So $6 to make one of these. And we were selling it for $6. So it was too freaking expensive. And we could only make 1,000. It's a low capacity. So we're working on that. And then on the marketing side, that's when we said, okay, well, what do we do here? So, we started just doing all of the things that I think most people in Silicon Valley talk about, like, let's do Facebook ads. Let's do a Snapchat campaign. I paid this service $2,000 that was because they sent me a cold email that was like, we do Snapchat marketing. It's a new thing. Try it out. I didn't do any diligence on it. I was like totally novice. I sent them $2K, and they basically took our product, gave it to, it was like at a fire festival before Fire Festival happened. They gave it to girls on a beach in bikinis and Snapchatted it. And I'm like running the numbers, and I'm like, this isn't causing any sales. Like, and it was so, in retrospect, so embarrassing. Like, why would I do that? But I was just, we were searching for something like, let's just do the playbook, buy Facebook ad, put up a website, all that stuff. And none of that worked. We would get like a $60 acquisition cost, and I think we'd end up having $40 of value, lifetime value out of that. And so at some point we then said, okay, let's do a really in-depth marketing study. So we went to a whole bunch of cafes, and we started just interviewing people in our city, like in different cities, to get a feel for like, what do people like about coffee? What are the things we should focus on, not focus on? Like a really interesting insight was that like most people who go to hipster cafes don't actually know anything about specialty coffee. Like they don't know what the origin is. That doesn't really matter. It's more about things like the hospitality that's made by a person. Sorry if there's weird background noise.
The adventures of live streaming.
Yeah. We have upstairs neighbors who, I don't know what they do up there, but there's always some weird noise. But let me know if it's too bad. So we did that. We thought that our target was millennial women, because that was who was spending the most at hipster cafes. Redid our website to focus on that. That didn't work. And this, like, months are going by at this point. Keep doing more Facebook ads. They seem like they're working, but it's not really working. Eventually, we did Y Combinator through this process. Eventually, I think the thing that was the most useful was another one of our advisors. She was one of the founders of Flickr, and she was like, in the early days of Flickr, we went customer by customer. We stalked them. Like, we looked at everything that they did, everything they posted. And so she took our customer list. She took everyone who'd been with us for over 4 months. It was something like 250 people. And she went person by person and looked them up on Google Street View, looked them up on LinkedIn, looked them up on Facebook. And before that, she'd asked me who likes Southern coffee. And I was like, everyone. I can't see a trend. Like, there's all ages, everything. And when she filtered for only people who've been with us for 4 months and people outside of San Francisco, like outside of our social network, it was really clear who the customer was. They were 35 to 55. They lived in suburbs. They were like doctors, professors, a lot of people in education. They tended to be well-educated, somewhat wealthy, and they had kids, and they were really busy, and they had lots of interests. Imagine like you used to live in Chicago, you went to nice restaurants, you moved to the suburbs, you still want nice food, you don't have time. And that was kind of who the customer was. And at that point, we hired a brand firm, and we basically like redid everything to really target that customer, which was kind of an interesting experience. That still didn't work, but at least we got farther at that point.
So then what happened after that?
Yeah. So what happened after that? So it started to work better. But I think what really started working is we then would get, and since the beginning, we would get asked by other roasters, other coffee companies to make their versions of instant coffee. And we always said no to that. At first, it was because we wanted to build our own brand. We wanted to be this like marketing company. And then we would start to say yes, but it was too expensive. We'd tell them, yeah, we can make it for you. It costs us at that time, $3. So we'd have to charge you $3. And then they're like, well, we'd need to sell it for 7 or 8, and so that wouldn't work. And then we made it cheaper, but the minimum size we could do with this one piece of technology was 2,000 pounds of coffee at a time. And specialty coffee costs at least, roughly $10 a pound. So you're asking them to put up 20K of beans, which is crazy. So there were all of these issues. So we're like kind of getting along with this customer model, like selling to different folks. We changed our logo. So here's our logo. You can see that it's sort of like retro, but reinvented to appeal to that Generation X consumer. But we took a couple bets with a couple roasters where we said, okay, we'll make your instant coffee and we'll take the inventory risk and we'll sell the rest to our customers. Proved out that it worked. And then in the meantime, we raised another round of funding off of that. And then we made some really big bets on the manufacturing side where we bought some equipment that, like, instead of working with a co-packer or an outsourced vendor, we're like, we probably spent $1 million buying different pieces of machinery, not knowing if we would have like the business model to support it. But finally, that started working. And then we ended up being able to go to roasters, and now we can charge $1.08 to the roaster. We can have a minimum batch size of 250 pounds. And all of a sudden, we started getting tons and tons of partnerships with people where all these roasters now want us to make their versions of instant coffee. And moreover, it's a much better customer experience, because what we were finding was, we were selling people these tubes online with a subscription. And so as a consumer, you're buying sudden coffee. So you got to believe three things when you hit our website. Number one, I want to try instant coffee, which most people haven't in the US. Number two, that I want to subscribe to coffee, which most people don't subscribe. Even if it's like the best coffee in the world, you're not subscribing to your coffee. And number three, that Sudden Coffee as a brand makes good coffee, whether it's instant or beans or whatever. So it's a lot to ask. So we now work with, so here's an example of a roaster product. So Ritual Coffees in San Francisco. We make this. It is in their brand. And they're really good at, they have stores, they've been in business for 20 years. They're really good at talking about coffee and why this is a good coffee. And so when consumers buy it and they're buying it from a barista who tells them about it, who's excited about it in person, all of a sudden it makes more sense for people. And so we found that for the consumer, it's just a much better experience too. So we kind of have been dropping the online model, believe it or not, as ironic as that is from where we started. And now we're focused on getting it into as many cafes as we can.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
So did y'all ever think about, because you said that you would take the bet or take the risk on the inventory side, and then you would sell it to your customers if that ever happened. Have y'all thought about bringing back that flash sale model for any of the excess inventory?
So, so the way that it worked originally, Equator was one of our first roasters, and the CEO of Equator, her name's Helen, she's phenomenal, pushed me to do this, pushed us to make a co-branded product. And so what we did is we bought 2,000 pounds. We needed coffee for our website. We still have the website. We said, great, we'll switch over. So our coffee is Equator, and we'll sell Equator some of however much you guys want. So we were buying the equivalent of, 17,000 servings of Sudden at a time, and they would buy 2,000 off of us, like a small amount. And it's still like that. So our medium roast is from Equator, and our light roast is from Intelligentsia. Those were the first two partners. If you buy Sudden with a Sudden brand on it, it's one of those two coffees. Now we work with 10, we're up to 13 roasters as of last week. And the question is, and so, we're sending them boxes with their brand, and they're selling it in their stores. And you can actually buy this in Whole Foods as well, which is really awesome. But should we bring it back on our website? And I absolutely want to do that. Since we moved to this model, we have been nonstop selling out, just getting it to them.
Wow.
So, which has been crazy. Like, we'd spent, a couple of years where were way over capacity. We kind of went in the far other direction. We went from being able to make 1,000 a month to being able to make like 60,000 a month. We didn't have the demand. And now like we just can't keep up. So I think we will go back to that. But yeah, right now we're kind of just focused on getting them coffee. And it's cool. I think this has actually been really interesting as an entrepreneur. People would always tell me this, but because we are meeting a need for the roaster now, we spend $0 on marketing. We spend $0 on sales. Like, we get word of mouth. For every new roaster who signs up, 3 more want to sign up because they see it at their friend's cafe. And this is sort of like a Y Combinator mantra, which is like, make something people want. If you make a thing people want, you'll get sales. And I was always like, no, but like, you got to pay to get the eyeballs. Like, you got to pay to get someone you got to pay to get traffic. But it turns out we had to pay because we weren't making the right thing. And now that we are making the right thing, and it's still instant coffee, but the right thing in our case was cheap, low batch size, high quality coffee. Those 3 things were hard. It took lots of work, but that unlocked the whole thing, which has been really cool. And so I think the mistake was like spending all of this effort on marketing. Like, I wish we had just said, cool, hey investors, we're not going to don't expect us to have any sales for a year. We're just going to work on the manufacturing process. Like, I think that would have been a better use of time than the brand stuff and the website stuff and the ads and the Snapchat stuff, like all of that.
That is such an incredible journey. So we've talked a lot about professionally, like where you are and how you've gotten to this place. But what's been going on in your personal life this whole time?
Ooh, that's a really good question. And by the way, I got to run in about 10, just as a heads up.
Sure.
Personal life has been pretty hard, actually, I would say. Not like a crazy way, like no extraordinary events, but I think so a lot of what I'm working on now came out of, as I said before, like doing this Burning Man camp. And I think that for me, like, I've always needed to maintain something outside of work. So like I still do that. I run a camp with some friends, and that is sort of like where I can put a lot of, unbridled creative energy without having to worry about reporting it out or sales or whatever. But I think it's hard to, like, as an entrepreneur, like, it's hard to like have to really focus on relationships. I think the other things that I didn't think, so I started down this path when I was 28. At the time, I was in a relationship at the time. We broke up through the path, but not because of the startup, but all of my friends in the meantime have gotten married. I haven't had time to like really focus on dating in a big way. And you also stop saving. Like, you're kind of living on a much lower salary. And so like, I didn't think about things like planning for a wedding or planning for like sending kids to preschool one day. And so that feels like very tenuous in a lot of ways, where you're like, okay, I wish I had, again, like, you hear the warnings about doing entrepreneurship and all that stuff, but like thinking about how it shapes your life and the risk that you take, I think I'm like much more hardened as a person. I think like going through stress for me is really easy compared to what it was before. But like, it's a lot harder to focus on like raising a family or all of those things, that now that I'm 33, I'm still young, but like it's, just stuff I didn't consider 5 years ago as much. But I think like I really believe so one of my values is relaxation. And there's this mantra that like, you got to be working all the time, live, breathe, die your startup, just do that, just do that. And I vehemently disagree with that. So I'll take like a full Saturday and Sunday, no email. I won't open my phone. I'm not working, no laptop. I'm not like camping. I'm just hanging out. I'm like watching. It could be Netflix. It could be going to bars. It could be, I really like live music. It could be barbecuing, but I'm not working. And I think that is like so important for people to like, you have to be like a whole human. You can't like just be your company, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So Josh, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's truly been an honor and a pleasure to share this time with you, and I'm very appreciative. Just have one more question for you, then we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Totally.
What question should I be asking you, specifically me, asking specifically you, that I just wouldn't think to ask?
That's a really good, because I feel like you've asked all of the ones that people don't normally ask. Okay. Are you going to ask it afterwards?
Maybe.
Maybe something really weird that I do is like I'm kind of like what do you do on it? So I really believe in like doing something really creative. So I do like a weird thing on the weekends sometimes.
Well, now I have to ask what that weird thing is.
Yeah. So this kind of was like a random thing that a couple of friends and I stumbled upon where, so we were throwing a Game of Thrones party. And I knew people wouldn't have costumes. So I brought a bunch of face paint, and I just like face paint crayons. And to you can just be like a Lannister, will just like paint some red on your face, right? And so like 2 weeks later, I'm out on a weekend, like at a bar or something, and I reach my hand in my pocket to grab a credit card, and I pull out one of these face paint crayons. And I was like, does anyone want any face paint? So I drew like 3 lines on some, on random people, and it became a thing at the, that night. So since then, I always have face paint. And if the right moment strikes, at any point, sometimes the face paint might happen to make an appearance. And what I really like is just like handing it off to other people, and it's sort of like, I call it like impromptu art. Like it's just a way to do something. You can rub it off really easily. You have to get consent. If anyone ever tries this, get consent, ask people. Like it's not okay to draw on people who don't want to be done. But it's just like a fun way to do something random.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Josh, for coming on the show. I really do appreciate your time. And to everybody who's listening, watching, I want to thank y'all very, very much for being a part of this, for sticking with us till the end. I love y'all very, very much. From the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Thank you. So, Josh, you want to wrap us up? Then we'll close on out.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. For folks who are interested, check out our website, suddencoffee.com. And stay tuned. Look out for Sudden Coffee in grocery stores. Anytime you see coffee in a test tube, it's us. So it's going to be really great coffee.
Awesome. Everybody, thank you so much. I will see you on the next episode.